Okay. Hi. We are from different groups and quite a lot of people, so we'll have to switch seats in between. We want to talk about openEHR in the DACH region, more in the Germany and Swiss part. We didn't found any partners in Austria. I will give you a short introduction into the German group. Hendrik here will give you a short introduction in the Swiss group, and then Alina and Emmanuel will talk about endeavors which are interesting for both of us. So let me start with the German group and therefore take you back to 2016, where the Medical Informatics Initiative started in Germany, and with it there were 4 consortia founded, and one of it was HIMED. And part of the aim was to bring patient data into secondary use with the help from interoperability standards and give insight in some patient data. So we formed use cases for each consortia. In HIMED we used infection control, oncology and cardiology, and therefore we needed to model data, and therefore we formed a HIMED modeling group. In 2017 we supported the modeling group with the help of a CKM, and at the peak time we had 58 users in 2019 from this project only, and reused 79 archetypes. And in 2018 we finally had an HIMED modeling governance in place, consisting out of 1 modeling leader and supported by the leaders of different subgroups. For each use case 1 subgroup, and in these subgroups there were a data steward, our modelers, and some clinicians who gave insight in the clinical fields. In 2021 we supported now the modeling group with the help of a terminology server and binded terminologies in our templates we formed for the use cases. After the work was done, we disbanded the modeling group and there were no more activities for this use cases, but in Germany still modeling went on, and we had a growing user base in the CKM, but our reuse archetypes shrank a little bit. So the request was then in 2024 to form a new group, and then the German openEHR modeling group was founded with some new tasks at hand. First of all, we wanted to help to structure and coordinate and support new modeling work, and to coordinate if there are multiple projects with the same outcome, that they can work together and model together, so that that modeling work wasn't done twice. On top of that, we want to rebuild the core data set, that is a research data set in FHIR in Germany, and for our openEHR partners rebuild it in openEHR templates. And finally, we also wanted to promote the standardization of openEHR in Germany and German-speaking countries, and at the beginning of this year at the HIMED symposium, we met some of the Swiss group, and it was immediately clear that we wanted to work together, but more on that now will Hendrik talk about.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to switch seats. Very choreographed. Exactly. So thank you, Pascal. I'm Hendrik, and I can be here because I have the pleasure of being the organizational lead of the Swiss Data Modeling Exchange Group. And we're part of openEHR.ch, which is the Swiss national affiliate. It was founded in November 23. And our task is basically promoting the adoption of openEHR in Switzerland. And we put a special focus on medical informatics education. So openEHR.ch is putting, we try to establish collaborations with universities of applied sciences in Bern and Zurich to already have openEHR being taught in courses there. And we're also integrated in the national ecosystem. So we are a member of eHealthStandards.ch, which members you can see up there. And that's a national digital health collaboration of several frameworks, as you can see there, HL7, for example. And we're also part of DigiSante, Swiss federal initiative for promoting digital transformation and establishing a national interoperable health data space, which is a little bit what Mohammed was also talking about, like to get integrated into this health data space and also be active on the political level. And also following in the footsteps of everyone here at openEHR International, so we also have our own little annual symposium, which is very nice. And the actual modeling activity is happening in the data modeling exchange group. We don't have a nice, long, venerable history as our German counterpart. We're only founded last year and then had some restructuring to the current organization. And we are largely self-organized. So we are founded by the initiative of interested clinical data modelers. And we have members from industry, so from medical IT and EHR developers like Emmanuel and myself, but also consultants and also clinicians, so data modelers from university hospitals and smaller regional hospitals. And usually we have monthly online meetings for 1 hour. Now we're also organizing our first in-person meeting on the 20th of November. So people in like the German-Swiss area, if you're interested, you can reach out. And the main focus of this, as the name suggests, is on exchange. So we want to align the various stakeholders that we have. We want to provide a platform similar to the discourse forum to discuss topics, discover current issues and pain points that people might have, and find agreement on modeling procedures and guidelines. And then the real, so to say, modeling work, so producing archetypes and modeling templates, is organized in specialized working groups. And the first working group for national template of a master problem diagnosis list started working in June. And so about the motivation, why are we here together? Like, why are we starting to collaborate now? Pascal already mentioned some things. The most obvious advantage is, of course, the shared language. And here I have to put the disclaimer that there's currently little representation of the French and Italian parts of Switzerland, but we expressly also welcome them to contribute. It doesn't have to be a German-speaking modeling group. But there are also like other common challenges, of course, like translation, terminology that are related to our countries. The structure of the healthcare system is quite similar, but we are going to have concrete examples about this later. But of course, as openEHR, like there's general like collaboration is always helpful. We can profit from each other's experience. We can share existing models, and that's an advantage of openEHR in general, right? And the reason probably why many of us are here is that there is maybe not no reinvention, but less reinvention of wheels, faster, more interoperable development. And it's, I think it's one of the reasons why openEHR is such a benefit for all participants, not just people within the same like geographic or linguistic region. And also mentioning this, Pascal already said, so technically we are not the DACH group today, we are the TUCH group, because sadly, to the best of our knowledge, Austria has not been enlightened in the ways of the openEHR. So maybe there's still some promotion and reach out work necessary to bring them in. Exactly, so that was so much about the theory, and now Alina and Emmanuel are going to bring you some concrete examples of our collaboration.
Yes, so as Hendrik said, we will move on to some concrete use cases. On the following slides, we will share 2 practical examples of challenges we encountered and how we work together on possible solutions. So the first use case, we would like to introduce the guideline we developed for standardization translation of international archetypes in German-speaking countries. So the goal of this guideline is to define how recurring fields and metadata of international archetypes should be translated, and this is not a static document, but it's continuously extended in close cooperation with the Switzerland. So the document ensures that all German-speaking countries apply the same translation and that we have a consistent approach. So the focus is especially on recurring fields and descriptions where uniformity is most important. So the question is now why we developed this guideline and why it's important. So first of all, it speeds up the translation process because the translators do not need to reinvent the wheel each time. Second, it guarantees consistency translation across project and countries. And the third and last one is that the archetypes are easier to read and the information are easier to find. So, and on the next slide, you can see an excerpt from our translation table. The first version was already created back in 2016 within the HIMET modeling group, as Pascal mentioned. And yes, this table is continuously refined and expanded. So it contains concrete examples of how we translate the recurring fields, like the description in a standardized way, and also the header use, misuse you can see on the slide. So each entry shows the original English term and the corresponding German translation that agreed upon. And the idea here is to give translators and modelers a clear reference so they don't have to decide eventually each time. And yes, this helps us to avoid inconsistencies and ensures that everyone in the German-speaking community is using the same terminology. And what you can see is only a small section. So as I mentioned, the table is continuously updated and expanded as we encountered new cases or new project. And in practice, this means that our translation process becomes faster, more consistent, and easier to maintain. So, and now I will hand over to Emmanuel.
So Alina has just presented you a guideline developed by the German modeling group. Now I will present you a guideline that we created in the Swiss modeling group. Our goal was to define a Swiss national guideline for linking a composition to an administrative case. In my presentation, I will first briefly explain why we need such a guideline in Switzerland, and then share the main challenges we encountered. So, why? Why do we need a guideline for linking a composition to an administrative case? In Switzerland, unfortunately, or whatever, administrative cases serve as a central unit for billing, quality reporting, statistical analysis. Therefore, we must be able to determine which administrative case a given composition belongs to. You might ask why we need a guideline for something that seems so simple. Well, the problem is that openEHR does not offer a standard way for referencing a composition to an administrative case. In fact, there are different ways to model this dependency. That's why we decided to create a national guideline to ensure consistency across Switzerland. So, defining a guideline for referencing administrative cases might seem really trivial. However, we face different challenges, and I will share the main ones with you. The slide you see here lists different modeling options meeting our requirements. Well, you don't have to read them all, of course. I only show this slide to illustrate that the modeling options can be categorized into two approaches. The first approach is, the upper section on the slide, uses an explicit archetype to hold the case identifier. Yeah. The second approach, shown in the lower part of the slide, is based on the openEHR Common Information Model. So it doesn't require a special archetype. Instead, it uses tags, folders, or links. Two main challenges arose from these two different approaches. First, the two approaches call for different skills. The archetype approach needs modeling expertise, while the other approach for the models on the lower part here require technical knowledge of CDR implementations. However, our Swiss openEHR modeling group is still small, quite young, and many participants are quite new to openEHR. So it was quite a challenge to thoroughly compare these options using different parts of openEHR in our group. And secondly, some of the options relying on the openEHR common information model, so the ones on the lower part here, unfortunately work differently across CDR vendors. However, we wanted the guideline to be vendor agnostic. So, we now had 7 options to choose from. Thus, the next challenge was governance. How to decide which of these options should now be recommended in our national guideline. Besides being a member of our Swiss openEHR modeling group, I am a member of the Swiss HL7 Fire Group 2. There, within this HL7 Fire Group, we have a very strict and given formal process for balloting. However, I could not find a description of the balloting process for openEHR. Fortunately, openEHR has a lively discourse community. Thank you very much to all of you, some of them might be here, who answered my question, the one displayed on this slide, promptly, and helped us so much. The approach used by the openEHR community seemed quite different from the strict balloting rule I knew from FIRE. Instead of running a ballot, they try to reach consensus or accept divergence, if this is okay. So, fortunately, this approach worked for our national guideline. We could reach consensus on one single option. It is the option using the case identification cluster archetype. This option is in line with the guideline of the German modeling group, with whom we exchanged ideas for decision making. We have decided to publish this guideline in English and on the openEHR International conference pages so that all openEHR members can see it. This slide shows the guideline in the openEHR Switzerland space of the openEHR International conference website. So everybody can access it. The members can really go through the page itself, and who doesn't have an account for this international conference webpage can access only this page directly via the QR code on this slide here. So that was my presentation. I think we'll discuss the questions over lunch, and not only discuss the questions, but perhaps you may have some opinion on the proposals for discussions listed here, and yeah, we would like to discuss them over lunch with you.